Liberal judicial activism puts Americans at risk and makes me think maybe liberals are right. Maybe we should be more like Europe. Far left, Bill Clinton appointee, federal judge William Alsup, U.S. district judge in, of course, San Francisco, ruled against the Trump administration rescinding DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Now, you know DACA, the dreamers. Oh, they're dreamers. They're just here for a better life. The judge said that DACA has to stay in place, although he did say that if you are a dreamer who has not received DACA protections, you won't be allowed to apply. Now, these are dreamers, right? These are little toddlers being dragged across the desert by their parents. Little toddlers. Little children. Who doesn't love little children? Who's not compassionate? Who's not sympathetic toward a crying little child coming to America? That shining light on the hill, that beacon of light for a better life. Only they're not little children. The crime data from the Department of Homeland Security, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, well, that tells us a very different story. So let's run through it. Here's a Washington Examiner story from back August 29, 2017, just before Trump decided to rescind DACA. The catalyst for what this lawsuit has now blocked. Well, a couple of studies were done. Now, understand something, that there are about 800,000 DACA recipients or applicants here in the United States. 800,000. Now, I firmly believe that DACA and advocacy of other forms of illegal immigration have one purpose, and that's to turn the United States irreversibly blue, but the furthest left blue imaginable. Socialist Democrat, Bernie Sanders, Tom Perez, far left, Keith Ellison, side of the Democratic Party. And specifically in Texas and Florida, where many DACA recipients settle. They're in California as well, but California is already solidly blue. Texas and Florida are red, and that is the primary goal of liberals, is to turn Texas and Florida blue. I see it in Florida, being immersed in politics here and nationally, but living here, I see it every day. So 800,000, mostly Latin American young adults. Now, this piece from the Washington Examiner, titled Feds, the federal government, 30% surge in illegals losing DACA freedom for crimes and gang violence. 30% increase in DACA recipients and applicants losing their protections for crime and gang violence. We're going to go through the numbers. Now, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services said that in 2017, now this, remember, was from August of 2017, so the number is probably greater as we sit here in early 2018, that 622 had their deferred action status pulled due to criminal activity. Let's look at the numbers going back to 2013. The numbers of revocations and terminations of DACA protections for those engaged in criminal activity. In 2013, there were 56. In 2014, there were 153. In 2015, there were 460. In 2016, there were 848, for a total of 2,139 DACA protectees losing their protections and probably or potentially being deported for committing crimes. And we're going to get into those crimes. This is not shoplifting, okay? These are some pretty serious crimes. And we're going to learn how bad the Obama administration policies were on this. Now, according to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the quote, the deferred action terminations were due. We're going to get into the crimes now. And that now you're really going to get angry. The deferred action terminations were due to one or more of the following. Ready? A felony criminal conviction. Dreamers. They're just dreamers. They want to be rocket scientists, accountants and lawyers and doctors and nurses. They're dreamers. A significant misdemeanor. Now, we live in a nation where we plea most of our cases, so felonies are often pled to misdemeanors. If we didn't do that, our court system would grind to a halt. There are simply too many cases in the system. Take everyone to trial, so you have to plea out. So a significant misdemeanor, I'll tell you from my experience in law enforcement, many of those started as felony arrests. Multiple misdemeanor convictions, or predicate felons, repeat offenders. Dreamers, they're just dreamers. They're not commit crimes. They're better than Americans. Get rid of the Americans. Bring in the dreamers. They want to make this country so much better by committing felonies, significant misdemeanors, multiple misdemeanors, gang affiliations. Not MS-13. They're dreamers. Those tattoos on their face. Ignore all that. Ignore the fact that they murder for the cartels, that one of their preferred tactics is stringing up their rival cartel, sicarios, hitmen, while they're alive and cutting off their genitals with dull knives and then decapitating them and hanging their bodies from bridges. Forget all that. They're dreamers. That they don't forget all that. They're dreamers. They want to be here for a better life. All that's nonsense. That's all noise. Forget what they did over there. Or the arrest of any crime in which there is deemed to be a public safety concern. That sounds pretty ominous, right? Now, most DACA terminations were based on the following infractions. These are not ranked in any particular order. Alien smuggling. Human trafficking. Okay, that's human trafficking. It's called a coyote when you smuggle in illegals. They call them. Dreamy. They dream. Who doesn't dream to be a human trafficker? Smuggling people in a stifling van, probably packed into the wheel wells across the desert. I mean, who doesn't have that dream as a child? Assaultive offenses. Who doesn't dream of beating people? Domestic violence. What young man doesn't grow up dreaming of meeting the woman of his dreams and then beating her into submission? I mean, these are just dreamers, right? Drug offenses. I mean, who doesn't want to be a cartel lieutenant smuggling cocaine in the United States? Just part of the American dream, right? So we're bringing over. Bring them into our country. Wholesale, 800,000. DUIs. I mean, why wouldn't we want illegal aliens without car insurance driving drunk, killing Americans? What kind of oppressive, racist xenophobes are we? Horrible Americans, aren't we? Larceny and thefts. I mean, why wouldn't we want to be ripped off by Mexicans and Guatemalans, illegals? I don't understand that. I guess I don't understand your racism and your xenophobia. Why shouldn't you let them steal from you? Criminal trespass and burglary. Why should your house be your house? Liberals don't want us to have a border. Why should your fence, your front door mean anything? Sexual offenses with minors. Yep. The dreamers are pedophiles. Thanks, Obama. Other sex offenses and weapon offenses. Like, there's so many. They're too numerous, so we're just going to say rape and gun charges. And this is what they call dreamers. Now, here's the really scary part. This is from a woman, Jessica Vaughn, who's director of policy studies at the Washington-based DC-based Center for Immigration Studies. She says, quote, now I've spoken about the problems with vetting people outside of the United States, right? I talk about the United States and Canada being very modern, relatively rich, very rich, actually, Western nations, and we have very good data. And our governments have the ability to have digital footprints and fingerprints of all of us. And when we go to buy a home or we want to go to seek employment with maybe a federal law enforcement agency or an intelligence agency or a contractor working with those, we can be very thoroughly background checked. That's not so south of the border. Remember, these 800,000 dreamers are predominantly Latin American. I worked in that world for a very long time. I traveled down there. I spoke down there. I looked for infrastructure with their law enforcement agencies. Their data is woefully inadequate. It's maybe a tick better than it is in the Middle East, which is why I was so vocal about us not being able to vet Middle Eastern refugees. But let's talk about this. So Ms. Vaughn from the Center for Immigration Studies says, quote, it confirms that DACA screening process, that the DACA screening process was woefully inadequate. The eligibility bar was set very low. Now, this infuriated me. Explicitly allowing people with multiple misdemeanor and certain felony convictions to be approved. But they didn't commit these crimes when they got here. Many of them had already been committing these crimes. The Obama administration knew about it and still let them in. And now a federal judge is saying that's okay. That's not okay. That's very problematic. Unreal. Only a handful of the applicants were ever interviewed. And only rarely was the information on the application ever verified. So they could have said we committed no crimes and been one of those cartel sicarios. Hitmen from down in Ciudad Juarez. And very dangerous people were let into this country under the guise of being dreamers, toddlers, flying little babies coming across the desert. Well, the data tells a different story because Jessica Vaughn goes on to say, this statistic undercuts the image of DACA that has been spread by the pro-illegal alien groups and the news media, that the DACA recipients are mostly college kids. This is not true. We don't know much about the population, but one of the few credible studies that has been done by a scholar at, ready for this, Harvard University, Even Harvard University had to admit the uncomfortable truths. Found that most are more than most, those toddlers, those little babies. Ready? Most are over 22 years old. And only about 20% graduated from or even attended a 4-year college. Well, how are you going to be a rocket scientist or a lawyer or a physician or a Nobel Peace Prize winner who has a week in the presidency? How are you going to do that without a degree? A significant share never went beyond high school. You can't be a rocket scientist. Only graduated high school. Kind of cutting into the whole dreamer narrative, isn't it? Well, this isn't really all that surprising, since over 72% come from a family at or below the poverty level. We're going to get back to that in a second. But a little earlier this year, it was a massive crackdown on gangs. You remember seeing this. The FBI was doing mass raids. Well, Dreamers were arrested alongside MS-13 and all kinds of other gangs. But going back to what I just read you makes me think that maybe liberals are right about something. You know, liberals always tell us we should be more like Europe, more like Europe. The United States is so crude and uncivilized and unpolished. We should be more like Europe. And I always said, I love my nation. I don't want to be like Europe. And I thought, well, I read this. 72% of dreamers come from a family at or below the poverty level and are accessing some kind of public assistance here in the United States. Well, I said, you know what? I did a little research. And I found something that's making me reverse my position and say that the liberals are right. John Cardillo said it. We should be more like Europe, specifically Switzerland, because Switzerland is now rejecting citizenship for any migrants who have ever been on welfare. And if you even want to apply for citizenship and you've been on welfare in the past 3 years, you have to pay back every penny to the government. It used to be that you could, that as long as you weren't on welfare when you applied for citizenship, you could be granted, but no. Let me read this to you. It's from Breitbart, London. A new civil rights act has come into force in Switzerland that prevents residents who have been on welfare in the past 3 years from becoming citizens unless they pay back the money they receive to the state. So I am all for the United States becoming more like Europe, if it means that we are going to make the illegals who have pillaged our system pay every penny back before we even consider legalizing them, which I do not think we should do. And I'll tell you this. If President Trump compromises on DACA without building a wall, now I understand compromise needs to happen in government. I don't want to see him. I don't want DACA at all. Because DACA, like I said, it means more votes for Democrats and it means changing the political complexion of Texas and Florida, thereby turning the whole nation blue. The numbers bear that out. But if President Trump has to give a little on this and he doesn't do it without draconian vetting and absolute deportation standards and he doesn't build a wall, I think his base abandons him. And Donald Trump could very well be a one-term president. This is all really important content, and I love bringing it to you. And if you find it as interesting as I do, please subscribe to our premium service at www.therebel.media/shows. And be sure to check out my new 1-hour show, Off the Cuff, Declassified, where I go even deeper into all this subject matter, bringing on great guests, really, really informative guests every day. If you are already a subscriber to our premium service, thank you very, very much. And thanks for watching. I'll be back with you tomorrow.